everybody. Very happy to see you all again. My name is Marius, as Claudia said, heading up the solutions engineering team and doing a semi-technical session today on customization and integrations. It will touch some technical topics. If you're a developer, that can be helpful, but you don't have to be. Maybe before actually going into this, what's the technical level? Any full stack developers? Yeah? All right. Anybody who has done some coding but wouldn't call themselves a developer? Yeah? That's me as well. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. And then somebody who says, yeah, I haven't ever seen a single line of code. I have no clue what all this is. Okay. Yeah. All right. But that should be fine. I think we'll get a good combination of technical, non-technical, and really solutions-oriented things. Quick introduction. So what does solutions engineering mean at Staffbase? So it's part of the sales team. It's the probably most technical part of the sales team. So the solutions engineers are really the experts of all the solutions we offer. They are mostly generalists, so they can show every single product we have in the portfolio. But then there's also some specialists that focus on specific topics, like going deeply technical or talking more about design. But overall, it's a generalistic team talking about all the solutions. And then about me, very briefly, I'm at Staffbase since 2018, so just over 4 years. Joined to build the solutions engineering team here. Enjoyed it very much so far. Originally, I'm an organizational psychologist, which probably explains why I really deeply care about communications. But I never worked in the field, so I immediately went into technology. All right. So there's 3 main things I want to talk about today. First ones are a little shorter. Third one is the focus of today. So why are we even talking about all this? Right? That's the first topic. Second piece is set up an extended workbench. So what does it mean and why is this exciting for partners? And we've heard some of this yesterday in Sven's session already. So there's not too much new there, so we'll keep this short as well. And then the third one is how do we integrate with Staffbase? What have other people done in the past and why is this exciting? Any questions about this agenda? I see some people looking at me a little confused, but it could also be based on the wine yesterday.
The wine is already.
Yeah, okay. And setup is okay, you can see everything, you can hear me, I can just continue. All right. Perfect. So why are we even doing this session? So why do we care about customization integration with Staffbase, right? Couple of numbers here. So looking from last year to this year, we almost doubled the employee count, so we grew quite rapidly, you could say. We have 14 offices in the largest Western cities, I would say. And also looking at the customer base, again, almost doubled within a year. And the people we reach also almost doubled, that we now reach over 15 million people. So the point I'm trying to make is that we're growing quite quickly, and it's impossible for us to serve all customers really well when it comes to services, right? That's not our business. That's what we need partners for. And also, this is me bragging a little bit. You've seen the slide before, right? We consider ourselves, and the industry considers us, a market leader. We work with the largest companies out there who are our customers. And also, if you look at different analysts, you've had Lara's session yesterday, right? They also like us. They also consider us a leader with the different products we have out there. And again, you could wonder, why should I care, right? Why is Marius bragging about all these facts? If you work on top of Staffbase, if you build a business on top of Staffbase, for your company, too bad the clicker doesn't work. That means it's sustainable business, right? Because we work with the largest companies out there. We are here to stay. We're growing quite quickly. There's a lot of business to make. It's sustainable, and it's simply a lot of money that your company can make of Staffbase. But then the second point, that's for you very personally. If you establish the Staffbase practice at your employer, at your consultancy, at your partner, you will be indispensable for them, right? Because it's an important line of business, brings quite some revenue, brings lots of new customers, so that's very important. And then I'm not saying you have to, but let's not kid ourselves. In the current time, we don't stay at the same employer until we're 60, 65, 67, however old, and retire, right? Today, we tend to switch employers every once in a while. And if you've worked on Staffbase projects, if you build up that knowledge, if you've done the certifications, if you've built that network in the Staffbase field, this will be very helpful for you, for your really personal value and for your employability. Because you've seen the companies we work with, it's not only lots of them, but they're also quite large. You will find really good jobs elsewhere as well. So that's the third very personal motivation why you should care about building on top of Staffbase. It's an established player out there. All right, but that's enough. So we got the why out of the way. So the two main ways how you can make business with Staffbase. First one is doing setup, doing communication strategy, being an extended workbench, right? And the second one is integrations. And we briefly look at the first one, setup and extended workbench. We've heard quite a bit about that from Sven yesterday, that everything from content strategy, but also more technical topics like user synchronization, authentication, design, migrations, all these topics, that's where companies need help with, right? And even after their launch, especially the larger customers still need help with, not even the larger, all of them still need help with migrations because they will migrate more and more use cases and tools onto the platform, continuous design, content creation. So there's really a lot of business to make. And I've already spoken to some of you on the bus yesterday or the day before, and I was really surprised and excited to hear how many hours and days you can actually sell for these projects. So that's really good. If I try to map that on a graph with excitement on the x-axis and then earning potential on the y-axis, I would say that this is already quite exciting and sufficiently profitable, right? But then me being in solutions engineering, being the technical nerd, really caring about integrations, I would say that integrations are even more exciting and can be even more profitable. Because I've also spoken to some people from the US yesterday who do really large integration projects with some of the larger grocers or retailers in the world, where I was surprised by how many hours and days they can actually sell into these integration projects. Because usually the Staffbase app is a great platform that you can build on, right? But it's not done, at least if you're a larger company, if you really care about HR integrations and other integrations, it's not done with one use case, right? There is use case after use case, and the nature of enterprise software is that it does require customization, right? So if you want to integrate an HRM solution, for example, it looks different for every company, right? And the requirement is different every time. So there's no one-size-fits-all that we could build and roll out to everyone, but we always need partners to do these integrations. And if you have a good customer, there's many of these integrations to do. So I personally think this is much more exciting, but if you're not on the tech side, if you do more content strategy, you might disagree. Yeah. But this is where I want to spend the majority of the time on integrations. And yeah, you've seen the Staffbase platform just now, right? So by default, it's an app, it's an intranet. It can work really well standalone, right? And all the communications needs you have, you can already get done there. But if you want to integrate, there's different ways to do so. So the easiest one, and yeah, these are branches. I'm not sure if that's good to see. It's half a branch. It's not that complicated. It's linking out. So you can simply link out to other tools. It's already quite surprisingly good user experience, because depending on what the use case is, people are used to use other systems, right? In our example, in our own app, we link out to Workday, because I wouldn't possibly, especially being a white-collar worker, do all my HR use cases in the app, right? That's what Workday is best at. Or think about email or the calendar. That's where I spend most of my day in, right? So it wouldn't make sense to integrate that in the app. That's something where you can simply link out. That's fine. I see Sven is nodding. That's good. So this might actually be true, what I'm saying here. Second one is embedding services. And you can simply embed websites, web apps, right? But you can also use single sign-on. So what we're seeing here, that's an example where we embed SAP Fiori, which is a web UI, web interface for different SAP use cases. If you think about employee self-services, this can be very powerful already. We can authenticate users into these platforms. That's no problem. In that case, we act as the identity provider. It's not too technical. User experience is also okay, but the downside is if you embed existing web apps, they usually have their own UI, right? So it might be a little different from the app UI. There's a break. Sometimes they have their own menu and their own navigation, and then depending on how large the phone screen is, you have a lot of menu and navigation from Staffbase and from that other app that you're embedding, so there's not much place for content left. So embedding is good, it's low effort, but it's not the very best user experience. That's where we're coming to next. Two slightly more technical options, but definitely coming with the best user experience if you're doing it well. First one is we're offering a long tail of REST APIs that you can use to connect to the Staffbase platform, and we'll look into those in a bit. And that really uses the Staffbase UI, all the Staffbase tooling and features that are there already, and just connects existing systems to that. And we'll look into these examples. And the second one is custom-built plugins. Also have an example for that later on, where you build your own web app that you can simply integrate. And yeah, plugin might sound complicated, but if you work with developers, if you work with web developers, this is what they do all day, right? Build simple web apps that we can, again, authenticate into, and that's it. So it's not too complicated, but the user experience is really good, because the user won't even realize they're leaving the app, right? Again, the app is fully branded. It's the employer's branding, CI, everything. And the employee might do some HR use cases, well, we'll talk about plugins in a bit, but they don't even realize they're leaving the app there. So it's very convenient, very comfortable. So talking about all the REST APIs, as mentioned, there's a long tail, there's lots of APIs. Quick show of hands, who has already worked with a Staffbase plugin? And no worries, I won't test you on the APIs, it's just, yeah. Sven, yeah, that's good. Anybody else? I think, have you worked with a Staffbase platform before? Yeah.
More than me, but not so much.
Okay, not with the APIs, no, that's fine. But as I mentioned, they work with existing functionality, and you can simply connect any use case here. We offer a developer portal that was mentioned yesterday already, so it's surprisingly well documented. So go there, check it out if you're technical, because that will explain all the answers or give all the answers about the APIs. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the APIs and talk about use cases there. One is the news API, and news are, of course, or in most cases, the core of the platform, right? That's where communication happens, news posts, etc. And the API allows you to not just use the what you see is what you get editor, but allows to connect any other system you might use to our news, to either read news or write news or change them. And a couple of examples is that you can, of course, connect an existing CMS, right? Think about WordPress, Contentful, others, where you already maintain some content for external communications, for example, but you also have a news channel in your own app where you want to list your external communications. You don't have to maintain these news in two different systems. You can simply use the API to connect them. That's one example. What we see down here, that's an example for Screen Cloud. That's a provider for digital signage. So if you have a bunch of screens in your factories and elsewhere, you don't want to maintain news and information in different systems, right? So you can also use the News API to connect to Screen Cloud and display news from the Staffbase app on your screens. Another example, Dirico, we briefly discussed it yesterday as well, right? That's for content planning, collaboration, content strategy, where we acquire Dirico and we integrate with Dirico, right? But it's really based on the News API, where you can plan and create all your content in Dirico, send it to different channels. One of the channels is Staffbase. Again, leveraging the News API. So that helps to make things easier, not work in too many different tools. But another example for the News API is something I've seen with a large automotive company. They really care about their translations because it's very technical vocabulary, right? And if they launch a new series of cars, if there is some really important innovation that they care about, they don't want our default bot translation because maybe it doesn't translate drivetrain 100% correct or some other very technical vocabulary, right? So what they do is they don't trust our translation service, which is already good for 99% of the non-technical use cases. But they build their own translation service. They maintain their own dictionary in that service because they are so technical and so specific in what they need. So they write an article in one language. The News API takes it, translates it, and then puts it back to the system in all other languages. Yeah. Well, it's yes. So that's the automatic translation that happens in the Experience Studio, right? So I won't go into too much detail, but it likely won't show the translate button because it's already in the native language of the user. Yeah. Yeah. Another example, the Chat API. Disclaimer, unfortunately, it's only REST API, so we cannot do real-time interaction with the chat, like with the chatbot. That's coming. But for now, what we have here is the option to send messages into the app to certain users or user groups, right? And it's not horribly complicated, but it's very powerful if you send, for example, birthday messages automated to employees, right? Or if they have like work anniversaries, sending them a really nice message, maybe sending them a voucher for the cafeteria or to get a coffee or some cake, whatever it might be, right? It's a super simple use case, but it's very effective in creating engagement, but also making people want the app because they're getting something in there. So that works. And then slightly more business-related example is that you can also start thinking about employee self-services here, where you start pushing pay stubs into the app, for example. So that's also what the chatbot could do. You don't have to write your own UI or anything. It's just sending a PDF document to the chatbot, and that's quite simple to set up if you have the pay stub. Yeah. Cool. Analytics API, very quickly. We have a very powerful analytics dashboard already, where you can segment by groups, by device, by pretty much everything. You can drill down into dates, etc. So I personally think it's perfectly fine. But there's also customers who use their own data warehouse, who use Power BI, for example, where they also combine Staffbase metrics with their own business metrics. And this is where you can use the Analytics API to extract all the analytics data, no matter how you want to slice and dice it, and then use it in your own tools as well. User API. I don't have a particularly exciting example here because it's really writing, reading, changing user data or group data, right? But one use case how we can use it, and that's something that larger customers need quite a bit, is you can connect Staffbase to your existing identity and access management. So if you have automated user onboarding and offboarding flows, this is where you can also add Staffbase to the list of tools where users automatically get provisioned or if they leave the company, and if that happens spontaneously, you also need a good offboarding workflow, and that's what you can use the user API for. But it becomes more powerful and, in my opinion, more exciting if you think about custom integrations with other APIs. And I'll show an example of that in a bit, where you can simply use it to place certain users based on behavior or actions into certain groups. Comments API, this is where you can read out comments. For now, it's read-only, and the most obvious use case is just moderator support, right? You can read out comments, display them in a way that is easy to read for moderators or for the right moderators for the right sections in the app. But a more exciting use case that likely works better for larger customers because they simply have more data to analyze in comments is doing sentiment analysis. There is a bunch of tools and SDKs out there, also in AWS or Azure, where you can do this, where you can pull all the comments for certain campaigns or topics or even news posts, depending on how much data you have, and get a feel for how people really feel about it. And that goes away from the technical use case very quickly because that has a massive impact on how you communicate, how you close the feedback loop, and really get a feel for how people think about what you do, right? So that can be very powerful as well. All right. Everybody still awake? Yeah? Good. It's a lot, but there's not many more APIs to come, I think. Good. Notification API, I believe that's the last one. Very simple, again, allows you to send push notifications to the phones of the users, right? If we talk about the intranet, we have a notification center where when you send a push notification, all those notifications will be stored there. You will see a red dot if you get new notifications. And that really amplifies any customization you do. Because if you think about, if you send people a new paycheck, if you have a custom plugin that helps for requesting personal time off or other use cases, right? Sending users a quick push notification with the result of that will help them to not having to open the app, go into any complicated systems, sign in, etc., but gives them immediate feedback and real-time feedback on what's going on, and in this case, helps them continue planning the vacation. Questions so far? This has been a little dry, I think, right? Lots of APIs and separate use cases. Let's try to connect them because I think this explains a little better how we can use this. And that's an example that one of the solutions engineers built recently, where we worked with a customer who said, we like Staffbase, and we definitely need it. Actually, they already had it, but they also said, well, we kind of need an LMS, but we don't need an LMS, so a learning management system, because they tend to be complicated, tend to be expensive if you need it for all your users, especially if you have a long tail of blue-collar workers who work in transportation or manufacturing, right? Getting an LMS license for all of them is expensive, but also it's difficult to get them all onboarded, get them to understand the LMS, go through all the courses. That's a lot of work. And they only had a handful of courses they needed to assign anyways, but they still wanted to have a grasp on who's doing what courses, are they actually following through, should they be allowed to do the course? And that's where we thought about, that is something we can probably build pretty much within Staffbase with the APIs we have, with some Microsoft Power Automate in the background. And yeah, let's actually look at what that looks like. So here we see the Staffbase app, as you know it. Oh, this is very difficult to read. Let me do some voiceover. So the person goes to the training center, sees a selection of courses they can do at their company, right? And then use a form, which we kind of see here, to sign up for one of the courses. So they can select the courses that are made available, maybe write some text for the manager, and submit the form. And what they see in the app is, thank you for submitting the form, we'll go into this, and you will hear back from us. What happens in the background? Again, very difficult to see, but that's a Microsoft Power Automate flow that actually gets the form submission from this user, does some forming of the JSON, format the files, etc. But what it also does is it triggers an approval flow. Let me pause this here very quickly. So everything we saw here in Power Automate happens in the background. Employee doesn't see it, manager doesn't see it, but the result of what's happening there is the manager gets an email, which is difficult to see here in Outlook, where they can simply click on, yes, I approve, this person should be doing the course, or no, this person shouldn't be doing the course. And once the manager approves, there is some more things happening in Power Automate. Like, we take the decision, we look at the course, we look at the pages the user needs, the groups they need, etc. So there's some more technical details happening in Power Automate. But what the user will see again is a push notification that they got the course assigned, so they got the approval from the manager, and they will also get access to the course via the menu. So by just requesting it with the form, the user simply got it after the manager approved, right? And that's much simpler than any LMS you could think of, right? Where you have different approval flows, have to onboard users, etc. It's just the app that the employee uses anyways, and that's it. All right.
When you're saying forms,
Yeah.
are you talking about the 365 forms?
No, valid question. So that's a plugin we have in the platform by default, where you can drag and drop create forms, right?
So
Yeah.
you provide the connection for Power?
Yeah. Yeah. So initially, when we started with the Forms plugin, it was like a standalone plugin where you could export a CSV with all the responses, or you could see all the responses in the Experience Studio. But we realized this can be much more powerful with a connector to, for example, Power Automate or Zapier or other automation solutions, right?
Is this optional if the customer wants to use my 365 forms?
Mm-hmm.
Can we do this?
Yeah. Yeah. Might be a licensing question, of course. But yeah, we can also embed Microsoft 365 forms. We believe, but I mean, it's our forms plugin. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no.
Because some customers are already familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If this already works, why change it? That's true. But yeah, so what happens in the background is this form will just send the responses to a webhook, right? And that can be Microsoft Power Automate, but it can also be any other system that can receive HTTP post requests.
When did you define the form in the front end? Or can we send the form in?
Sorry, come again?
How is the form defined?
Yeah.
Is that embedded in or an iframe?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It's embedded in the app. It's mobile responsive, so depending on if the user uses it on the desktop or on their phone, it's just a very seamless user experience. And the editors don't have to be technical to set this up. Can be really anyone in the company. Yeah, really dragging and dropping different fields in there. We automatically send user data also to Power Automate, so you can cross-reference it, figure out who's their manager in Microsoft, etc. Yeah. Yeah.
Dann das deep dive in the model, but are you sharing as well this code behind for these examples, or how we can improve our partners to
Yeah.
learn this kind of custom?
This example has no code because it's, Microsoft Power Automate is a no code. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
So the first things they maybe like to try out is
Yeah.
rebuilding what
Yeah.
showcase here.
Yeah, and I highly recommend it, no matter how technical or non-technical you are. Microsoft Power Automate isn't crazily complicated.
It's
Yeah.
about how to
Yeah.
in the activities.
Yeah. And yeah, just to summarize, this is really the flow that happened. Sending the form data to Power Automate. Everything else happens in Microsoft, right, until Power Automate works with the user API to group this user into a group where they can see the training, because this permissioning happens in Staffbase, and also send a notification via the notification API. And yeah, seamless for the user. All right, and then another example for custom plugins is really, first of all, the option to embed any web app, right? But even better is if we can authenticate the user. The first example, this pretty much shows free parking spots around the office space, right? And how many free parking spots there are left. So there is not really a need to authenticate the user. But the other example is an example for HR self-services, where it's paychecks, where it's shift swapping, and other use cases where, of course, you have to authenticate the user so you know what paycheck they should see. Yeah. Also quickly looking at what this could look like live. So this is another app where we go to the plugin. It's also just in the menu or anywhere linked in the app. And then everything is in here. And what we see is it's the Staffbase UI, right, which is branded for this particular customer. We have the bottom bar, we have the top, we have the menu still on the top right. But in here we can have different HR use cases like retrieving pay stubs and others. And to be entirely transparent, this is shift swapping example. These are just examples, right? We didn't fully build this because we don't have the HR backend. And this, again, is what I mentioned earlier. It looks different for every single customer, right? We can't have one Workday integration or one SAP HR integration or anything like that. That wouldn't work because it's configured completely differently in every single organization. Which is why we need partners to do these integrations. Yeah. All right. Questions about custom plugins? No. Good. Custom widgets. I think that's one of the last examples here. So in the demo before, you have seen that we have different concepts, right? We have news, we have pages, and everything we see in the app can be built with a what you see is what you get editor. And widgets are a way to extend this editor. So whatever use case you have, you can, as a developer, build a widget that gets fields that a non-technical person can configure. And once you've built this for your use case, for your company, every non-technical person can go to the what you see is what you get editor, have a simple button to add this widget, and then this is the editor. It's, again, sorry, very difficult to see, but this is different fields that the developer gave the non-technical people to configure the widget, and that's all they can do, so they can't break it, but it will work for everyone. It's very simple to use, and yeah, this is where you can really connect any use case, can build a QR code generator, can think about local weather, but it's also more technical use cases where you want to retrieve data from other systems and display them here. So it's really, again, depending on how creative you are, there is no limit. Yeah. Again, this can be seen in the developer portal. I won't go into details of how exactly this works. It's, again, quite simple. The one thing I want to highlight is, even in the developer portal, we say, you can build this in-house, but you can also reach out to our partner network, right? Because, again, it's not our business model to do these services ourselves. Experience shows that nobody has too many in-house resources for these topics, right? So, again, the partner network is key in delivering these things and making our customers successful.
If you have such kind of questions, just go to the partner manager and CSN, and they ask us as partner manager to make this kind of relation to another partner. It's not your main business.
So, as partners, do you have any development license to allocate some repo just as documentation for now?
It's discussed in a paper.
Yeah.
The question was that you like to have as well access to.
Yes, so, okay, you have the documentation, but if you want to play with it,
It's something what we launched
Yeah.
currently. We are talking about sandbox environment where you can work as a technical partner in the background. Yes, we have it now in place. We have reports how you can get it. It's what you hear. No, it's just yes.
Yeah, and for pretty much everything we've seen so far, it's something, I mean, you can just start building, right? I don't know who mentioned that yesterday, but looking at some of our partners like T-Systems, MMS, for example, they've already built quite some custom plugins that they are now selling themselves, right? So it's almost a marketplace model where you can develop a plugin once and sell it to many different customers, right? You can even market that. But also if you think about these cases like widgets, you will realize that if you work with a couple of customers that use Staffbase, you might see use cases that you can reuse as well. So this is also very thankful from a business point of view that you can think about these things once, develop them once, but then also have a repository for upcoming projects where you can easily repurpose these things. So that's the same for widgets, it's the same for custom plugins, but also all the code snippets and middlewares you will develop for the APIs, chances are really high that you can repurpose those for different projects.
Maybe to add one of the sentences, most of the internal requests we receive from our technical teams or customer teams that work with our customers, they're more on a technical level, like asking for custom integration, custom development, plugins sitting on top of our platform. So most of the requests we get are more technical rather than content strategy requests we receive.
Okay.
And we've seen cases where like one built something for one customer and was able to scale it to other customers as well, also considering the initial investments they take with the first customer, like maybe phasing it out to be a bit more competitive with the first initial quote. Because it might be a large customer base, we might be able to sell it as well.
Okay, well, yeah, just some final thoughts here. There's countless options, right? So I think your creativity is the limit here. The answer is usually yes and. Because we can say yes to everything. I don't like to say yes but, because that already leads to resistance, but it's yes and, right? So yes, we can do this, and it might be 100 days of development, but we can do it. And the third one is, that's the most important point I want to make, is we don't compete for services, right? I hope we've made that point very clear. We don't want to make business or make money. We don't even have the capacity to do it on services. We've grown quite quickly, right, from serving 1,300 customers to 2,200 this year. We can't serve all these customers with these services topics, with custom integrations, custom built things. That's why we built this platform that you can build on top of. And that's also why we're doing this session. That's why I'm here. That's why Claudia and the partnerships team, Michaela, James, Stan, everybody's here to support you to do these things, because we think that our customers can only be successful if they do these integrations, right? At the same time, we can't do it. You can. Ideally, it's your business, right? So that's what I wanted to say here. Yeah.